A man who, as a physical being, is always turned towards the outside, thinking that his happiness lies outside of him, finally turns inwards and discovers that the source is within him. Soren Kierkegaard. The central bankers and governments are trying to erase the middle class. Get the word out, like, subscribe, and share these videos before it's too late.
Well, let me start from where we are in the world economy, where we are headed, and then talk about actions we take at the fund. Where we are, unquestionably extraordinary crisis that has hit the whole world.
We are in a debt bubble. We were in this debt bubble before we had this crisis. Now that we have the COVID crisis, they're pushing more debt into the system. The model was sustainable before, now we just added gasoline to the fire. If I know this, they know this.
We would see in the end of 2020, 90% of the countries having a smaller economy than at the start of the year. Our assessment is a loss of GDP in these 2 years of $12 trillion. Just to give you a picture of what it is Japan, Germany, Spain, Italy not producing for a whole year.
Blockchain-based solutions and digital assets are able to relieve the system of frictions. This will increase efficiencies in trade. We will be able to breathe life into national economies as well as the global economy by taking out the red tape. Hold on tight because there aren't any other options. The Internet of Value is coming.
Join you because action is what the world needs right now. The global economy is undergoing a massive transformation.
This massive transformation is a convergence of technology. As they usher in technology, simultaneously the fiat system or the old system is dying. They're trying to reset the system as softly as possible, but as Lagarde stated, this technology is about to bring massive disruption.
Corda will be the underpinnings of how business gets done for decades into the future.
We have all watched these blockchain-based systems being built. These systems are essentially networks, and at one point they will need to take value out of these walled gardens and move to other walled gardens. When that happens, liquidity will rise and new apps will be built off the top of these systems, and the Internet of Value will expand.
As much as possible, since the start of the COVID-19 crisis, what we have done is to cocoon ourselves. And inside that cocoon, a fundamental change is taking place of our society, of our economy.
The phoenix rising from the ashes. The fiat system is breaking down and a new system will emerge. I believe it is more likely to be a crypto asset system than a gold-backed system. They could also intertwine, but one thing is for certain, the paper-backed fiat system is dying and confidence is being lost.
But we also have seen in this crisis a response like no other. Phenomenal actions by central banks and by finance authorities that have put a floor under the world economy. And by doing so, by pouring liquidity, they have provided the ground for partial and uneven recovery that we project for next year.
As the central banks inflate away money, it's not being distributed fairly. It's simply going into Tesla and Amazon stocks, widening the wealth gaps. Citizens of the world at one point will get violent. When you have nothing and the few have everything, your family is starving while they're covered in jewels. There is a point of no return. They need to make the system fair before the masses come to this realization.
The actions we take now, this year, the next, will determine what kind of world emerges.
The next world that emerges is going to have the illusion of fairness, but at what price? Data is key here. They're going to study you and exploit you.
That takes me to my most important point answering your question, how bad it is going to be. The worst of the shock is behind us when in early March, we were really worried that there would be collapse in the world economy with massive bankruptcies and massive unemployment. That did not happen because of the decisiveness in action.
She's patting herself on the back for her and her central banker friends printing up money, increasing the money supply, while decreasing your purchasing power. They robbed you. The crisis is the sovereign debt crisis, and that they're responsible for. Too much debt is a problem. When you have too much debt and you can't pay the monthly bills, what happens? This is going to happen on a grand scale. This is why the soft reset into crypto is eventually going to happen after they burn every bridge.
But we are faced with the risk of a tale of two cities within countries and across countries. And that we have to be really, really concerned about.
A Tale of Two Cities is Charles Dickens' story about the French Revolution. The story is set against the conditions that led up to the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. Kristalina is saying the central bankers have to be cautious of this, of the masses revolting. I sound like a nut to the average person, but this is 100% real. I'm aware, and so is she. Don't be fooled, be prepared. She is being careful of revolution. Let me say this again. She is being careful of revolution. That is how fragile of a time we are living in.
Before we were hit by the pandemic, trade tensions were top of mind, and that has not gotten any better. What we see is contraction of trade that is 3 times bigger than the contraction of GDP. We are expecting in 2020 minus 12% in trade. Why? Because countries are retreating behind their borders. They are putting restrictions on medical supplies, in some cases even food items. And there is this concept that perhaps it is better to drop from global supply chains and do everything at home.
We're at the forefront of facilitating the digitization of entire sectors of the economy, from public sector use cases such as central bank digital currencies to cutting edge private sector solutions in payments, insurance, healthcare, trade, and beyond.
I am very clear when I speak about it that we are going to pull the rug under our own feet in terms of recovery unless we overcome these tendencies towards more protectionism. And the evidence is very, very clear. Trade is good for growth, it is good for jobs, it is good for poverty reduction.
They have been fighting this trade war, but all of the problems that they have in this trade war can be solved with digital assets and blockchain technology. The unfairness that happens in trade has a solution available today. Intellectual fraud, US dollar dominance, frictions in trade, transparency, and authentication. Kristalina is right. Seamless global trade is needed to prevent the next crisis. Global trade is important, and blockchain can help with fairness and efficiency.
We also know that sometimes there isn't sufficient protection of intellectual property rights. There isn't enough attention to a trade regime in which there is transparency of participation.
There is a lot of things happening at once, but the Internet of Value is the missing puzzle piece. In my opinion, we have very limited amount of options, and the one with the least amount of pain is the Internet of Value.
One of my favorite writers and activist, Dr. Maya Angelou, said, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has to go through to achieve that beauty.
Metamorphosis. The beauty of the butterfly comes from the cocoon of the caterpillar. We are watching change happen, and it's happening from the broken system. Something beautiful will emerge. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Soren Kierkegaard.